Hey everybody, welcome to Sunshine and Whiskey. I'm your host, Lana Durrett. We're going to stir up life topics and explore the messiness and the craziness of life. This is information for the inquisitive. I myself get lost in information and curious about all things. I spend a ton of time reading, listening to podcasts, and having purposeful conversations. The more perception I receive, the more I want to share with people and dive into the next new quest. The power of each of us, our accomplishments, passions, unique stories, and authentic voices, we all have so much to address and to tear into. And that's what I intend to do here. I want to talk to high vibe humans, share space to be transparent and inquisitive, share laughs, and explore life. I'm not an expert or a professional, and my purpose is to give voice and have genuine conversations concerning business strategies, relationships, personal development, intimacy, intuition, or simply your favorite damn book. Whatever it is, let's just unpack it and explore it. Let's build a bridge to bring energy and souls together by sharing sunny and spicy conversations. Welcome to Sunshine and Whiskey. Hi, everybody. Welcome, movers, shakers, dreamers. You're in for a treat as we uncork another episode of Sunshine and Whiskey. I'm Lana Durrett, your podcast navigator through the landscapes in business and life. And I'm back from holidays and I'm excited to get back at it and roll out some more episodes to everybody. I've got a fantastic lineup of people coming on to the podcast, so I'm excited. And today by my side, I have the remarkable Guy Poirier from Creston, BC. Guy starting his own podcast. He's here to tell us about an amazing journey that he's had through his own life, share some of those obstacles and trials, and just give us some insight on how things can kind of go really sideways and how you can come out of that on the other side. I'm going to introduce Guy. He's coming on here shortly, and I'd like everybody to give him a big old welcome. Hey, Guy, how are you today?
Great, Lana. Thank you so much for having me on. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I am excited to have you on. You've got a lot of things going on, and I'm excited for you and to hear your story today, so I appreciate it. First of all, I'm going to ask you, I do have a podcast called Sunshine and Whiskey. And the first thing I like to do is, whether people partake in alcohol or not, I like to cheers to them and welcome them to the show. Like we're sitting outside in a little pub area and get to have a great conversation and get to know each other. So yeah. I am partaking. I'm having a little shot of whiskey here, and I cheers to you on this. What day is it? Thursday, and moving into the weekend. So thanks for coming with me here on this show.
Cheers, Lana.
Thank you. The first thing I want to say, Guy, is imagine Sunshine and Whiskey as a road trip. What's the destination? Like, where are we heading? And what, most importantly, is the tune that's probably playing on the radio?
Oh, where are we going? We are going on a journey of personal growth and development. That's what I'm all about. And what's playing on the radio? Well, it's going to have to be the Beatles. But to pick out one song, how about Here Comes the Sun?
Yeah. A classic and a good one. Forever. I want to say to the listeners today on this episode with me, so I met Guy on LinkedIn, and he's also a friend of mine with the NGBN TV crew. So I appreciate him offering to come on to the show. We'll get into some of the good things that he's going to be doing in his own life here later on into the podcast. Guy is sharing with us today his path of, I like to say, bulldozed by a series of like literally shitty events that have gone on in his world. And he kind of slowly found his way out of the rubble by different methods and people and support systems. And he's here to tell us, I guess, a little bit what happened and, how he came into this new way of living. I want to say that, many of us, you can have a bad day and you can have a bad week. But, Guy, when you lose your house and you come close to losing your children and everything you worked hard for, kind of goes out the window, it's kind of hard to find that light. And, you begin to question things about life. And I think that's where I first kind of could resonate with you and really was interested in your story when you were working with some episodes on men's mental health during Men's Mental Health Month. And I got to hear your story then. And being a Canadian, it was great to reach out to you and say, hey, you know what? I would love for you to share what you've been through and how you are adjusting to different things and how you kind of come out of that. So thank you for chatting with me tonight. And I would like to just dive right into all the stuff that you've got to share with us.
Yeah, so definitely, you know, I lost a lot in a short period of time. And to say that I'm on the other side right now would be a little bit of a stretch. I'm still very much struggling. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do from here. Finding my identity, really, because once you've kind of lost everything that you used to identify with, now you have to figure out, okay, well, what do I want to do from here? Who do I want to be from here? And I'm still very much trying to figure that out. So, you know, thank you for giving me a chance to come on the podcast and share my story. And yeah, it's just it's a struggle.
Identity. Yeah, like identity is true, right? You really are kind of starting over. And so I'm going to just pull you into that. Let's start. Let's just get into that. You shared with me and you shared with LinkedIn, you know, followers and stuff about your journey. And I really, that's where I want to go. Let's jump in right from the start. And I guess your home in Fort McMurray, unless you want to start prior to that, you feel free. And
no, the fire is definitely the easiest place for me to start, because that's really the day that everything kind of flipped upside down and everything in my life just started to change. So May 3rd, 2016, right, the Horse River wildfires, the city of Fort McMurray and surrounding communities were evacuated due to wildfires. It was one of Alberta's largest wildfires in Alberta's history, with the largest evacuation of people in Alberta's history, with over 88,000 people evacuated. So this, you know, this date isn't, you know, special to me only. Like, a lot of people suffered and experienced a lot of change in their lives as a result of this. But for me specifically, you know, on that day, just that day alone, I had so many things going on, right? So when I woke up on May 3rd, I wasn't thinking about wildfires or evacuating. I was thinking about writing an exam to advance myself in my power engineering career. I was also thinking about my girlfriend leaving me, and she was in the process of moving out, right? So that was my morning already, kind of lots of stuff going on. But yeah, later on in the evening, you know, we got the order for the city to be evacuated. And that night I got, you know, a phone call from the mother of my children with, you know, my children had evacuated with her, but I got a call from her, and she started to hint that she was considering relocating outside of Fort McMurray. She wanted to live in Edmonton. And that was, you know, the beginning of the process of me having to fight for custody. So I was losing my girlfriend, trying to advance myself in my job. I ended up losing my house, and then I had to fight for 2 years to make sure I didn't lose custody of my children. And things kind of just kept unraveling from there. So yeah.
So you lost your house in Fort McMurray. Your ex was moving the children to Edmonton. So you spent a couple of years fighting to keep the kids, I'm assuming, not to keep them, but to spend time with your children. And so what got you to, how'd you get to Creston, BC?
Right. So there's a journey there for sure.
Okay. So did you were you ended up able to go back to Fort McMurray? Did you get back?
Yeah. So I can keep talking and talking. That's just
the
thing, right? So
yeah. If I have a question, I'll throw it in there, but you go ahead and share.
Yeah. So up until the fire, I'd had 50-50 custody of my children for 6 years, right? The mother of my children and I, we separated in 2010, and we shared 50-50 parenting up until the fire. And the day of the evacuation is when she first announced that she was considering relocating to Edmonton. Now, the day of the evacuation, you know, I don't know what's happening. There's so many things going through my mind, you know. Sure, it might be a valid reason to start looking at relocating outside of town. There might not be much of the city left once the fire goes through, but there's just too many unknowns at that time for me to make a decision, right? It wasn't the right time to be having that conversation. But the evacuation lasted, I believe, over a month, right? Mm-hmm. We couldn't come back into Fort McMurray for over a month, so I spent a lot of time living with my mom in Calgary. But during that month where we were evacuated, she purchased a house in Edmonton and started to take steps to relocate the children. So I had to intervene, and I had to apply with the courts to basically have the children returned to enforce the 50-50 agreement that we had in place. And then in return, she applied to relocate them to Edmonton. And then, she made some financial demands as well. But so that went on for roughly 2 years, the court battle. But we did move back into our home in February of 2018. My house was rebuilt. So we moved back in. And then April 2018 is when the court stuff kind of came to an end. And then in October of 2018, so October 6, 2018, it's a hard date for me to forget because it was the Conor McGregor versus Khabib fight. And I'm a big fan of both fighters. I had a party that night.
Yeah.
I had coworkers come over for drinks and watch the fight. And when I went to bed that night, my girlfriend, who by then had become my fiance, she announced again that she wanted to move out and she wanted to end the relationship. So another kind of hit, right? But because going to court and trying to fight for custody of my children was so financially demanding, a lot of the money I got from insurance, for the contents of my house, just ended up going straight to my lawyers. Once she left, I just couldn't afford to maintain all my financial obligations as a single income earner in my house. My mortgage was pretty high, and then I had child support and all the other bills that everybody else has, right? So I basically told the bank, hey, I know I just moved into my brand new house, but I can't make the payments anymore, so come take it away. And then, after foreclosure, my house had lost $200,000 in value, so I had to file for bankruptcy. Turns out I made too much money to file for bankruptcy, so I got what they call
bullshit thing. Oh my God.
So I filed what's called a consumer proposal, and basically I was still paying back all the money that I owed, but it was just in arranged payments over so long and whatnot.
Great.
And then after that, because the bank foreclosed on my home and I didn't have a roof to put over my children's head anymore, my girls actually still ended up going to live with their mom full time for 8 months after I just spent 2 years trying to make sure I could keep, seeing my daughters. So I lost my girls a second time. And then, just in order to reduce my monthly bills and to be able to pay child support and whatnot, I cashed out my RSPs so that I could, pay off my vehicle, reduce my monthly bills. And I was kind of, trying to pull myself out of my situation. So after foreclosure, I was basically just renting basement suites with 1 bedroom. The girls would come and see me on the weekends. I'd sleep on the couch. They sleep in the beds and whatnot. And trying to make my way back, trying to climb back out of my situation. But then fast forward to 2020. Yeah, 2020. It's either 20 or 2021. But I began consuming medical cannabis to kind of help deal with anxiety and sleep and depression, but also with ulcerative colitis, which is a chronic disease that I have.
Right.
Because all the other prescription drugs that I was taking for anxiety because of the fire and everything else just weren't really doing it for me. But where I worked in the oil sands as a power engineer, my role is considered to be a safety sensitive position. So one day I got pulled aside for a random drug test. It showed THC, so I got nailed I failed the drug test for medical cannabis.
Right.
So, at first, they seemed receptive. They had an interview with me, sat me down, said, why are you doing this? Why are you smoking cannabis? How often? How much? All the questions, decided to send me for a substance abuse assessment. So I went and did that. I talked to a psychologist and he asked me a bunch of questions about drugs and my childhood and all that. Verdict came back that I wasn't a drug addict. I was just trying to medicate myself on advice of my doctors. Company wasn't really receptive to me using medical cannabis. They kept sending me back to doctors, wanting second opinions, having them fill out questionnaires. And I was kind of in limbo for a period of time, for about 7 months, from the first time that I failed my first drug test to eventually I was let go because I failed the second drug test. But just to get to that real quick, like I said, I was in limbo for about 7 months. And one day I just kind of there was a family situation. My daughter and I had an argument. I felt stressed. I felt anxious. And in order to cope, I lit a joint and smoked it. I called in work. I said, guys, I'm having a situation. I'm not coming in tomorrow. I had a bunch of days off lined up already. So I figured, this is a good time for me to calm down and get my stuff together.
Yeah.
Stopped smoking cannabis 3 days before I went back to work. On my second day at work, I got pulled aside for another random drug test, failed the second time, and that was it. Was fired on basically on the spot. Yeah. So I went and I lost my house. I lost, my retirement. I lost my car. Now I lost my job. And, my parenting time with my kids are kind of all over the place, right? So, yeah, all that was just a really tough thing to just kind of swallow and work my way through.
All at once, no doubt. Wow, yeah, it is. It's a whole lot. So I take a look at that now, and if you're looking back, like if you look back in that last bit, where are some key moments that you're like, the universe kind of just aligns with things, and if you could go back and like kind of relook at things, are there some key moments where you go, if I knew this about myself, I would be a different person here, or this situation made me who I am at this moment? Like, are there some defining times during then where you went, shit, had I turned left instead of right, this would have been different, but because of that, this is now a result of it?
Oh, of course.
A good thing.
Yeah, but I can't really look at it that way. That's the way I used to think. If I had done that, if I would have taken this turn, if I'd have said this,
Good. Yeah.
Hindsight's always 20/20, but I believe that things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
Like I said, as a child, I had a upbringing where I got to go to private school, and I was very successful. I did really good in class, and I always figured I'm going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or a successful businessman. That was the view that I had for myself as a child. I always wanted to wear a suit and tie to work. That didn't pan out, but that was kind of my trajectory, right? Now, when I became a father at 21, I'd already studied power engineering. I'd already decided that I didn't like it and it wasn't for me and it wasn't something that I wanted to do. And I'd actually just gone back to doing just, being a grocery clerk or stocking shelves at Walmart, like just, no income paying jobs. And I was far more happy doing that than to be a power engineer. But once I became a father, I figured, well, I have to earn a living to support this family. I can't just keep working at Walmart. So I actually went back to school to become a coker technician. I was hired in the oil sands. And then once I had my foot in the door, I was able to kind of go back and rewrite my power engineering exams and move up from there. So I ended up in a job that I didn't like. I wasn't passionate about. But I felt it's what I had to do as a man to provide for my family. I figured that's what men do. They just sacrifice what they want for the sake of their family. And I really had the belief that I was going to be the oldest man to retire from this place. I was going to be 80 years old, and I was going to spend my whole life working and then just die, never having done anything that I wanted to do for me, right? So I had that period of time. And then when I lost my job, I felt mixed emotions, right? Because I was angry, for one, because I felt like, I failed the drug test for cannabis, but I really feel like I was doing it for the right reasons, and I was open and honest about why I was doing it. And I wished I would have had a little bit more support from the company that let me go. But also, I was angry because, now I lost my income. I'm unemployed. I was making, 6 figures. Now I'm collecting unemployment. That was a hard blow. And I'd, gotten in the pattern of, I work 6 days, I'm off 6 days. I work 6 days, I'm off 6 days. So my life had become routine. And now I was just wondering, well, what the hell do I do from here?
Yeah.
And this was during COVID. So, I'm applying for jobs, but who wants to hire during COVID, right? Not a lot of people were hiring. So, there was a lot of anger and frustrations about what I was going to become. But
it wasn't your choice.
At the same time, because I knew that I'd never really been happy there, I saw an opportunity to finally do something for myself, which was to start a business. So that's what I ended up doing.
For sure. Divine intervention, right? It might have been a long way to get there. a long fucking way to get there. But you know what? At some point, something came in and went, let's live the path that you're supposed to be living. I took power engineering as well, Guy, and almost the same story. I took it and it didn't align with the kids and doing the shift work and stuff like that. But so I too went more in a direction that I wanted. So what did you end up starting? What are you doing? What did you end up starting out of that for a business?
Yeah. So I found myself unemployed. And like I said, I saw an opportunity to do something I wanted, right? Little me from my childhood said I was going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a successful businessman. And I figured, well, lawyer and doctor are kind of out of the picture because I don't have 8 to 10 years to study and I don't have the money to go back to school. But I figured I could start a business. Didn't know anything about starting a business. Didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just looked around the house and I said, what am I interested in? And I kept, I have lights all over my house like this. I said, well, why don't I see if I can make some money at that? Lucky for me, I had a childhood friend who had his own lighting business. So I was able to reach out to him and get tips and, make some connections that way. And I'm just going to say I never made any money in the lighting business.
Okay.
I started visiting with clients and doing audits and talking and working on some projects, but I never did make any money. But what starting the lighting business, so the business was called Greater Performance Lighting. What that did for me, though, was get me out there to try new things. It also got me connected with coaches and mentors, and I made connections, and that's what I got out of starting Greater Performance Lighting. It wasn't a financial success, but it was definitely a learning experience and a way to connect with people. So I'm really happy that I did it, even though, I'm not making any money at it.
Is that where you got those kick-ass lights above your head?
That's just from Amazon. That's just some simple stuff.
It looks really good. Are you still doing the business, or are you doing two things now? Are you running the lighting business, or what are you doing now?
The lighting business is kind of on the back burner for now. So going back to my story, I lost my job. I was on unemployment. I started lighting business, not making any money at it. So I kept looking for work. And ultimately, I was able to secure a job as a door-to-door salesman, selling lubricants and grease and, aerosols and stuff like that.
Okay.
But again, I had no sales experience. I'm doing door-to-door sales during COVID. And really my mental health was just in the dumps, right? And I'm trying to do Greater Performance Lighting, and I'm trying to do workshops and working with coaches. And I just have no passion or interest for sales and grease, for lubricant and sales. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here.
That's all right.
I have no passion for grease and lubricant sales, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, I just spent almost 15 years in a job that I didn't like. Do I really want to start this process again? So it was really hard for me to get invested in that job. So after 6 weeks, I had made no sales, and I had a performance review coming up with the VP of the company. And I knew that one of two things was going to happen. Either they were just going to fire me because, I hadn't made any sales, or I was going to have to quit because I wasn't making any money. I was actually making more money on unemployment than I was working. So I ultimately, when the meeting happened, they gave me the choice, and I said, well, you guys are going to have to fire me because I don't quit, but also because I figured it'd be easier to get unemployment again if I was let go as opposed to if I quit. So that only lasted 6 weeks. And then I was back to looking for work again. And it just so happened that my partner, Caitlin, she's a registered veterinary technician. She'd been scouted by a vet clinic here in Creston. They asked her, hey, would you consider come working for us? She already had a job in Fort McMurray doing the same thing, but I looked to see what kind of employment might be available for me in Creston, and there was a brewery that was hiring, and they were interested in talking to me. So I had an interview with the brewery. She had an interview with the vet clinic, and we decided, well, let's leave Fort McMurray for work, which is probably something you don't hear very often. Everybody goes to Fort McMurray for work, but we left Fort McMurray for work and came to Creston. I'd been in Fort Mac for 27 years. Caitlin had only been there maybe a year or two at that point. But yeah, that's what led to our move to Creston.
Holy smokes, that's awesome. So are you still at the brewery?
No, I was there for about a year, and then I got a job working for the region at the rec center. So I have a government job now. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Right on.
So sorry. So you would ask me about greater performance lighting. So yeah. So once I moved to Creston, I mean, I was still working with my coaches and mentors. Thinking about still doing lighting, but the market in Creston really wasn't there. It's a very small town, 5,000 people.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was just really struggling mentally even after I moved to Creston. I moved out here by myself originally because we had a lease back in Fort McMurray, so we couldn't just break our lease. We had to find somebody to take over. So Caitlin stayed back. So I moved up here by myself. She followed 2 months later, and I had to go to court and, try to bring my girls with me. My daughters made the choice that they wanted to come and live with me full time, but I still had to go to court to kind of change our parenting agreement, right? So, yeah. So when I kind of get my dates a little mixed up here, but I want to say February 2022, my girls moved up. Yeah. And then so greater performance lighting kind of took a shift. Because I knew that for me, in order to become a successful businessman, I first had to get my own shit together. I had to get my family in order. I had to regroup because, with the fire and bankruptcy and the child custody, our lives got tossed up so much that we all kind of landed in different spots, and I had to bring the family back together. So greater performance lighting took a new name. It became greater performance living and greater performance learning. So greater performance living was just an Instagram page that I kind of started for myself to brainwash myself and influence myself to live the life that I wanted. Because, Instagram, I don't know, you're a woman, so maybe it's different for you. But as a guy, if you open an Instagram account, at least for me, the first things that, is suggested to you is girls in bikinis and cars and guns and animals eating each other or whatever. So right. So I started to kind of filter that stuff out and just put, positive messages and reinforcement and, things like Bob Proctor and Jim Rohn and all these things. So that's what greater performance lighting became. It became greater performance living. And that's really when my personal growth journey took off with intention. Before I was growing, but more unwillingly. It was kind of just happening, right? Like the universe was
pushing through the mud.
Grow. Whereas here, I kind of started to take control of my life, and I started to take action with intention, as opposed to just living in autopilot all the time. And yeah, so that's where the lighting business kind of went. Now I just do this for fun because I like it. If in the future it ever pans out that I can make money at it, great. But yeah, right now I'm more focused on just personal development, growing, and with the podcast, putting my journey out there. So hopefully it inspires others to do the same who might be struggling.
I freaking love how every single piece, every struggle turned into a gold, the house led you to, getting having to find a new job that actually set with more of who you were. The girls ended up, back in your life. The lightning business turned into actually a personal development business. You went from Fort McMurray, and I know in the past you've said to me, you always dreamt that you'd be around mountains, and now you're, in Creston, BC. I just love everything about this right now. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I realized. I'd always been dreaming about having an acreage and having animals and living in the mountains with the lake and the forest and everything. And Creston definitely offers that. Now, I don't have the means to afford that yet, but I'm closer to it and I'm working towards it.
The key word is yet.
That's just it, right? So I feel like for a while, I was very angry that the universe was taking stuff away from me, or at least that's how it felt. But with a shift of perspective, I can see that it's actually given me what I've been wanting all along. It sucked that I got fired from my job after 15 years. And it sucks that I don't make that kind of money anymore, but I wasn't happy there. So, it was a good thing in the end. Right now I get to pursue what I want to do and follow my dreams, as opposed to just punching 12 hours in, punching out, and rinse and repeat,
Yeah,
So,
that's right. It doesn't matter whether it's God or universe or Buddha or whatever you want to call it, something bigger than us always knows what our path is, even if we try to control the situation. And, and I think those are our learning times, are the times that we control the situation instead of just letting go. And, like you're kind of forced into. You talk about, mentors and supports. Who were some of your key supporters or mentors, if you don't mind sharing about that?
Yeah, well, my children, first and foremost. I mean, honestly, in my darkest time, if I didn't have children in my life, things might not have turned out the same way. Like, I really decided to persevere for them. And even today, like, I watch my daughter Avon, who goes to the gym all the time, or my daughter Winter, who's into art, and I can see her art's always getting better and better. And I'm like watching them grow, and they're shining examples of, dedication and consistency and perseverance. Because even going to the gym, she's getting in better shape all the time. She's eating better, and she's always talking about her gains and her new personal records. And that's exciting for me, and it's exciting to have that experience with my daughter, but it's also motivating me to want to do better physically for myself and to eat better. And I want to go to the gym, and with my daughter Winter and her art, I can remember when she was 5 years old, the way she would draw was just, circles with sticks for arms, and sticks for fingers and whatnot. And now she can draw portraits so good. Like, it looks just like a real picture. And that taught me about, being consistent and dedicated to your craft, and the results will come after you put the work in, right? So my daughter is definitely some of my biggest coaches and mentors. The first coach that I came across was Diana Noble. When I started GPL and I put that Instagram account, when I created the Instagram account, I started putting out content. I followed her because she also had an Instagram account, and she just reached out to me. She said, "Hey, thanks for following me. Are you a new business in Fort McMurray?" And I said, "Yes." And she asked me what my elevator pitch was, and we kind of got the ball started, and I decided to hire her as a coach. So that was the first coach I had. But right around the same time, like within weeks, I was just driving to the grocery store, and there was an ad on the radio talking about Startup YMM. And I found out that that was a local organization in Fort McMurray that helped entrepreneurs launch new businesses. And I was thinking, what a perfect timing. I just lost my job. I want to go into business. I have a business coach, and now there's an organization that's going to support me and help guide me through this. So yeah, I jumped on board. I became a member, took some of the workshops. I even became one of their mentees. So they had a mentorship program where they would take, local business leaders who already made it, they'd become successful, and they would pair them with some of us. And we get to go to them for feedback, information, knowledge, whatever, right? And I did that for a little while, but ultimately I was told that maybe that wasn't the right time for me to be part of that program. And they were right. My mental health was in the dumps. I wasn't really committed to what I was doing. And that was right around the time too when I was working as a grease and lubricant salesman. I was just unhappy and miserable. And
right.
So I was let go from the program, but I still maintained a connection with Startup YMM through Mia Vargas. And Mia is just somebody who's really special for me. I kind of consider her to be my main point of contact at Startup YMM. And she's always been very encouraging, very supportive. But even when she saw me struggling, she went out of her way to see if she could find work for me. So they were just putting the office together at Startup YMM. And she said, I can't hire you as an employee, but if you want to come do handyman work in our office, I can charge it to your business. So that kind of got me, it got me motivated to go out and do something, because now I felt, somebody has use for me. So I can actually go and earn my own money my own way. I don't have to be collecting unemployment. but somebody was giving me a chance, and somebody was recognizing that I was struggling and going out of their way to help me out. She even, said, hey, I have some lights I need to put on my deck at my house. Do you want to come and install lights at my house? Very simple job, like anybody could have done it, but she wanted to give me something to do, and she wanted to support me. Yeah. So unofficially, I don't know, Mia and I have never really discussed about our relationship, coaching, mentors or whatnot, but I definitely consider her to be one of my mentors. And yeah, I don't know, that keeps going. The next person, I guess, would be Ian Hill. I don't know if you want to get into how I came across Ian, because that's going to be another whole conversation.
That is a whole, yeah, that is. And I mean, definitely somebody that has crossed many paths and paved those paths for a few people to hit different directions and to do some networking. So
yeah,
fantastic person doing great things. Hence everybody working with mental health. You guys have some amazing things that are going on through NGBN TV, especially discussing men's mental health and what's going on in that environment. Let's get into that another time. I think I want to know, I guess, some of the tools that you're using or have used as you've kind of gone through your own journey. So when you talk about men's mental health, especially on NGBN and through everything that you're doing now, if you're coaching somebody else, what are some of the tools that you directly use that you would provide or suggest to somebody else who may need your support?
Right. So when I look back at my story, because a lot of what I did was unintentional, I just kind of did it without thinking about the steps I was taking. But my first bit of advice would definitely be to put yourself out there, meet new people, try new things, and don't be afraid, to just really make yourself available to others, because that's how the ball really got rolling for me. Once I started doing coaching, and once I joined Startup YMM, I started talking to people. New opportunities kind of came up, and some didn't pan out, but others, grew. So if you want to get out of your situation, you just have to try new things. I could have just sat at home, been depressed, saying, oh, my life sucks. I lost my house. I lost my job, this and that, and done nothing about it. But I knew that I wanted better, and I knew that I wanted to get out of my situation. So I put myself up. So
do you think you were more willing at this stage to maybe meet, like when you talk about Diane and people and Ian and people who've crossed your paths, do you think you're more open as you've moved through your journey? Maybe not consciously, but do you think you're more open to hear what the people that crossed your paths and be like, hey, wait a minute, or do you just think they happened in your life for a reason? It was just coincidence per se, or do you think they were actually placed in front of you for a reason?
Well, I think they were placed in front of me for a reason, for sure. I mean, it feels like a coincidence when it's happening, because it's just so random, right? Like Diana reaching out to me, or me hearing that radio ad, right? It was just random. I didn't go looking for those things, but they happened, and I accepted them, and that's just it. Right? You move on with what you get. So, I think they were put on my path for a reason, for sure.
I love that. Have you ever heard of Mitch Albom? He's an author, and one of the why I'm kind of going down this little goat trail here is when you're talking about these people who I call were put in your path, to support you, or if you're willing to actually hear them and embrace them. But one of my favorite authors is Mitch Albom, and he has a book called The 5 People We Meet in Heaven. And I always resonate with that book, because in your life, they always say that there's going to be 5 key people that you come across that really defined certain things that you go through. And this book just kind of, it's the 5 people in the book that he meets, that you don't realize, some people, they're not even in your life for long. like they're somebody you could have met in a store or, things like that. And yet they play, and you don't know it, but they play a key role in your life. So yeah, I think just listening to you talk about Diane and YMM and people, I think it was Diane was her name, where she was offering to, I can't officially hire you, but I will do everything to make sure that, you're looked after and starting to make some money. And like you said, give you back some purpose.
Yeah. So that was Mia who did that. But, as I was listening to you talking just now, I was picturing those 5 people, and I definitely got 3. So Diana, Mia, and Ian would definitely be 3 of those people. Diana came into my life as a business or entrepreneurship coach, but a lot of what I took out of her lessons were life lessons, like things like perspective, universal truth versus personal truths, emotional factors, environmental factors, things like that. I'm sure that all those things help in entrepreneurship, but for me at the time, I was trying really hard to just get my life together. I was trying just to get out of bed in the morning, and those things. She was more of a life coach to me than an entrepreneurship coach, just because of what I took out of her teachings. With Mia was just, selfless, putting yourself out there, just caring, just love, just pure love. Just, I don't know who you are, but I see that you're hurting, and I'm gonna, make an effort to reach out to you and help you out the best that I can. That's what Mia did for me. And then Ian, well, Ian's still a little bit of a mystery to me, and I'm hoping that when he comes on my podcast, I can get some answers out of him. But Ian was just somebody who sent me an invite on LinkedIn, and I saw, Ian Hill wants to connect. I'm like, who the hell's Ian Hill? I don't know this guy. Right?
Yeah.
What does he want? So I clicked accept, and I went on his profile and I watched one of his videos, and the video was just of him in his car, and he was talking about his journey to become the oldest man to play NCAA football. And he talked about how he wanted it to do this to raise awareness for men's mental health and suicide prevention, right? So that video really kind of hit a chord with me, and I just left a little comment saying, I don't know anything about you other than this video, but I feel like I have a lot to learn from you. And from there, he said, here's my phone number, man. Let's have a phone call. So we had that phone call, and he said, what's your dream? What's your vision? What do you want to do with your life? And I told him, and he just said, cool. Well, I believe that you can achieve it, and I'll do anything in my power to help you. And that's the journey that I've been on for the past year with NGBN and Ian. It's just trying to get my vision off the ground.
Yeah, it's magical. I know I've watched you and heard you and kind of sat on the outside for a long time here. And, it's the magic of community. It's the magic of people being willing to reach out to somebody they don't know. I always think of moms, or people walking in malls and watching moms with babies bawling and screaming, and people just walk by instead of actually taking the time to be like, can I help you? Whether or not they get mad at you or they feel insulted or anything like that, it's you asked, you reached out. What they do with that is completely up to them. So it's about finding your people and being willing to do those things with other people. I want to really get into this because I don't want to lose sight of where I want to go. You're starting a podcast, which you just mentioned. Let's talk about it. Let's tell me, when's it starting? What's your format? What are you doing? What's the feeling of this podcast? What inspired you?
Well, thank you for asking that, because I'm still trying to figure out the format. I'm still trying to figure it all out. So let's start with, you asked me like how the podcast came to start, right? At least I think you did.
Yeah.
If not, I'm just going to pretend that you did.
You're doing it anyway.
Go with it. So like I said, I've been working with Ian and NGBN for about a year, right? It started just doing some workshops, and then I did Surviving to Thriving earlier this year, and just keeping in touch with the guys. And then I was asked, would you be interested in being like a contributor for us? Just put those LinkedIn posts, Yeah. I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll try. And after that, Ian approached me and said, how would you feel about having your own podcast? So having a podcast isn't something that I've put a lot of thought into or that I've been dreaming about. It's just something that was presented to me. But when I first met Ian, I told him I want to be a speaker and I want to be a writer.
Yeah.
So he comes to me and says, "Do you want to be a contributing writer on LinkedIn, like for Friend GBN? And do you want to have a podcast?" So it's, to me, it feels like he's giving me the opportunity to practice becoming a writer and a speaker, right? That's how I see it, anyways. That's how I take it.
Yeah.
So I said, of course, I'll do it. I don't know if it's going to be any good. I'm going to stumble. But yeah, I'll give it a go. And I guess that's kind of the format of the podcast. I mean, it's called Tripping Through Transformation. I'm sure that the podcast is going to evolve as it goes. The first episode was just me talking about, how the fire impacted my life. And then I just kind of glanced over everything that I discussed with you here today, just my downfall and then how I got myself out of it. So like I said, it's still taking shape. I'm still going to figure things out. It's going to get better. But essentially what I want to do with the podcast is show people that it's okay to start something new, even if you don't know what you're doing. One of the things I learned from Diana is that if you wait for things to become perfect before you do it, you're never going to do it, because things are never going to be perfect, right? I'm not going to put out my first podcast episode being as successful as Joe Rogan or being as polished as like a broadcaster or a reporter or somebody who interviews people for a living. Like, that's not me. I used to work in oil and gas, so it's totally new. But it's going to get better. And I want people to see that evolution, right? I want them to see it's okay to suck if you want to become better. And I'm hoping to just, also by sharing my story, because I believe that there is power in sharing stories. If my listeners hear my story and they find it relatable or they find it enlightening or motivating or whatever, then I feel like I've achieved something and I've accomplished something of purpose or of use, right? So I want to motivate people. I want to support people. I want to let people know that, we all go through shit. We don't have to go through shit alone. And there's people out there that are willing to help them, support them, whether it's, by being attentive or providing them with information or whatever. So I know I kind of gave a vague answer, but the podcast is really about becoming a better person and wanting better for ourselves and learning and growing.
And it's going to evolve. And like, I shared a post today. You have to fuck up to grow, and you have to embrace every time we mess up. It's not something to be, ashamed of or worried about. If you're not screwing up, you're not doing anything. You're literally stagnant. Life is not moving. So I always think the more times I screw up, the more times I'm doing something right. And the next time is the right time, and it's also being okay to quit. People always talk about, oh, don't be a quitter and don't be this. You know what? No, fuck that. Like, there are some things in life where if you've tried it and it's not for you, it's 100% okay to be like, I'm pivoting, I'm changing gears. This isn't for me. And I'm on to the next thing, right? Yeah. That's what life's about. Not attaching to one thing if it's not right for you, like you've done. Right? You've recognized that maybe a career wasn't right for you and you've moved on to something new. And now you're willing to take all these amazing opportunities that are going to do really cool things for you, whether or not it's the right thing, you're going to do it. And you're going to give people back a lot of value. And you're showing them to try it, step out of their comfort zone and see what's out there. Open up the curtain, open up that window.
Yeah. Once I moved to Creston, letting go of greater performance lighting was a real struggle, because that felt like quitting. I'd been invested in the idea for a year. I'd reached out to my childhood friends saying, hey, can you help me do this? I'd met with clients, I talked to my coach and had coaching session about growing the business. And eventually I just said, it's not that this isn't for me, but this might not be the right time. I really need to focus on my mental health. I need to focus on getting my family back in order, getting my life in order, building that foundation, and then maybe we'll revisit it. So yeah, it was hard to let go because it felt like quitting, and I'm anti-quitting. But it wasn't quitting really. It was, like you said, pivoting. This isn't working for me right now. Let's focus on something else. Let's see where that goes, and we'll go from there. And I don't regret at all making that pivot, because if I was still focused on lighting right now, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you. So
Exactly. I love how you said that. It's just sometimes it's just not the right time. We can always circle back, right? We can always circle back, everything for a season.
as long as you're taking action all the time, that's the main thing. Especially, we're talking about people who don't want to suck, or they don't want to look bad. Well, you might look bad, but at least you're taking action towards something and you're getting better. So you're still further ahead than the people that are just doing nothing.
Hitting there, sitting. Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree with you more on that one. Because I wanted to do our 3-shot nightcap, but you know what? I seen your post come out, and right away I was messaging you because psychedelics are something that I like to talk about. Of course, they're all in the news right now. It's the big vibe. I don't know if there's a few people that I listen to. So you know what? On a fun and intellectual conversation, what's your thoughts on that? There's many people out there trying it for different reasons for mental health. Meditation and psychedelics. There's retreats with psychedelics. There's controlled psychedelics and not controlled psychedelics. Yeah. Tell me about that. I see that you were tapping into that. I'd like to do a small piece and hear your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. And all those things that you named, like those retreats and the psychedelic therapy and all that, I would love to be able to partake in that. Yeah, it's pretty expensive, and you have to go out of country, because in Canada that stuff's not legal, right? So you have to go to like Costa Rica and places like that to do it. But yeah, psychedelics are pretty interesting for me because I've been anti-drug most of my life. Both sides of my family have a history of substance abuse. So growing up, I learned to stay away from it. Plus, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And I know that the whole, say no to drug with Ronald Reagan and stuff, that was all in the States. But I mean, we got American TV in Canada and even in Quebec. And I'd get the commercials, this is your brain on drugs and all that. And going to private school, they teach you about say no to drugs. So yeah, for most of my life, didn't touch anything. In my early 30s, so it's funny actually that I discovered psychedelics in my early 30s, because the fire 2016, I would have been 32, I guess. So yeah, I would have probably discovered psychedelics around that time. And at first it was just, a buddy of mine saying, hey, I got some mushrooms, you want to try it? And I would have typically have said no, but I was getting curious, and I knew that it would be okay for me to try, because if I went to work and I did a drug test, well, it wouldn't show up. So that was kind of what pushed me into trying it. My first few experiences were pretty basic. I mean, I would just watch UFC or watch Netflix or just hang out with my partner, and we'd have discussions, and it was enjoyable. It made everything more pleasurable. Like watching Netflix was a lot more interesting, and watching guys fight was also more interesting, because you're more interested in the techniques and not so much as them, beating the crap out of each other and spraying blood everywhere. But you're like, oh, I see why he did that move. Now I see why he did that. But yeah, so that's kind of how I was introduced to psychedelics, just kind of, in a recreational way. But after the fire in 2016, like I went down a dark path. Like it was really hard for me to lose all that stuff. And I would do psychedelics on my days off on occasion, and I started to see some benefits to it. Without doing it intentionally, I would just take the psychedelics and I would say, "Oh, I feel better now." So, for example, I'll just give you an example of an occasion where I did psychedelics. After the fire, my partner and I just kind of got together, watched a movie, and we did some psychedelics with some mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
And I was going through a lot of anxiety and depression at the time. I'd lost my house and I was fighting for custody of my kids. I just had a lot of pent up emotions. And that night, like I said, we did psychedelics. And then I just kind of started to get really emotional, started to hyperventilate, and I just started to cry. And it literally felt like dark energy was flowing out of me. And that might sound crazy to some, or it might sound scary, but it was one of the most relieving experiences that I've ever had. It felt like all the stress was just flowing out of my body, you know? And I said, well, that's pretty interesting. You know, it, I got something out of it. I was able to release this negative energy. So I kind of started to take psychedelics more intentionally. I would do it maybe once every 2, 3 months. But I would go in with intention. So I would put on binaurals, or I would put on like hypnotic videos from YouTube, or I would just put on music like Pink Floyd, Beatles, whatever. And I would put on my headphones and just tune out. And I would start to like kind of revisit moments of my life. And I was able to see it from a different perspective. So let's say I had conflict with somebody. Well, I was able to put myself in that person's shoes. And then I was able to say, I could see why they would have felt that way. Maybe I should have been nicer. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So psychedelics helped me find, first of all, perspective, right? Different points of view. And it also made me discover love and compassion. So I remember another time when I did psychedelics, I just walked past my daughter's bedroom. You know, there was nobody home. It was just me by myself. But I walked past my daughter's bedroom and I looked in, and I saw her picture, and I just started to cry. And I was like, I could be a better dad. I could hug my children more often. I could tell them that I love them more. Maybe I should be spending more time, you know, going outside, playing games with them. Like, it made me think about all these things that on my day-to-day life, I'm just so busy just doing my own thing. I don't really take the time to reflect. So that's kind of where I found my appreciation for psychedelics. That being said, like, I've never seen a specialist. I've never talked to a doctor or a therapist or anything about this. This is just something that I discovered kind of on my own. And I believe in the potential of psychedelics solely on my own, based on my own experiences. And now I'm starting to follow some of the leading experts in the field, like Rick Dublin and, you know, Dennis McKenna, Paul Stamets, those guys. But starting to learn. But I'm happy that more people are talking about it anyways, because, you know, someone like me, who's, like I said, didn't touch drugs until his 30s, I could see why some people might be reluctant to give it a try, and they might have their own opinions about it. But I would say, if you're curious, give it a shot.
I think you hit it there, is that, you know, there's one thing for we all hear about the 60s and the 70s, and, you know, and then us kids being in, you know, in the 80s, where it was, they went the opposite. And, you know, there's mushrooms and weed, and then, you know, there's the other things like the acid and everything else. So again, it was don't do drugs. And if people who did, like, I wasn't one of them kids, but I mean, I was around it all the time, but I wasn't in that side. Not because I chose not to, just a couple of times I tried it, it wasn't for me. Now, moving through my adult life, when you start talking about doing mushrooms and psychedelics for, you know, really at that time is entertainment. You know, most of us get into it for the entertainment part the first couple of times, and then you understand, and as we mature, start to look at possibly the medicinal purposes of it, and the medical purposes, and the mental purpose of it. And it's amazing. One of the key things that I think is people don't spend enough time sitting with themselves and understanding themselves and being okay with feelings and understanding what feeling that they're feeling. You know, there's like thousands of them out there, and people pick the biggest 5. Oh, I'm hungry, I'm mad, I'm sad. No, there's hundreds of them, right? You're lonely, you're you know, there's many things. And so sitting with themselves. So when I started getting into it, it was like the meditation side. I started doing much more meditation and much more yoga. And then from there, going to a few different retreats and festivals, you know, like-minded people, understanding it, getting educated behind it. And then it made me feel more comfortable with going, okay, wait a minute, I want to know more about this. And the self-awareness and the connection that it can have for some people. And I am by no means a doctor or anything like that. And I don't tell people to go out and do it, because really it depends on your mental state, as far as I'm concerned at the time. I mean, I have many addicts in my life, and there's, I think, people who can do it and people who can have a very scary adverse reaction to things like that. But for myself, it really is an emotional processing and a self-awareness and a connection. And anyway, I'm excited when I hear people start to talk about it, not because I know I'm not an SME on it or anything, but I'm always interested in what people find with it. And the more people I talk to, the more people I'm hearing the same stories, and the same experiences that you relate. So, you can't go wrong with people when you talked about walking past your daughter's room or, being with your loved and feeling more emotion. If we walk out of that and we change certain behaviors and we take different actions because of that, that's a win. That's a win not only for us and our own health, but many of the people that are in our daily circle every day. So that's kind of my take on mushrooms and where I'm at. So when I seen that you were kind of going down that path and talking about things like that, I thought, good on you, Guy. These are a lot of the topics that on my podcast that I want to talk about. People don't, there's still so many people who, taboo, right? Don't talk about those things. And God forbid you're around my children and things like that. So it's breaking open some of these barriers of allowing people to, it's not for everybody. Nothing is for everybody, but those people who are interested in and want to try a different way of living life and getting through some of the things they are, then all the power to you, right? Whatever floats your boat and works. So cool. Yeah. Very cool.
I was going to say at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about how I struggled to find my new identity, right? And same goes with talking about psychedelics. There was a point where I didn't feel comfortable talking about the fact that I did these things. I mean, just imagine around the time when I'm fighting for custody of my daughters, did I want the mother of my children knowing that I was doing psychedelics while I'm fighting for custody? Like, I didn't want that to be used against me, right? So there was that. There was that reluctance to open up about it. But there's also, like I said, my family they have substance abuse in their family. So do I want to open up about, hey, look at what I'm doing, and again, society, what are people going to say and think about you? But ultimately, I had to make the decision that, I've tried it. I had a positive experience and I want to talk about what it did for me. Yeah. And that's how I chose to move forward. And like you said, it's not going to work for everybody. I mean, there's people that are allergic to water. So, nothing is 100% safe for everyone.
Yeah. I think there's many tools, and I don't think we should just pick one.
Right. And I know that for me, the pharmaceuticals didn't help me, and psychedelics seem to be helping. Now, I do wish I was doing it the proper way with therapists and things like that. And I'm hoping that as time goes on, the laws are going to change and that's going to become more accessible. Yeah. But until then, I'm kind of left to my own, right?
That's right. Yep. No, good on you. You know what? And it is, if we're combining those with the healthy sleeping and the healthy eating and the meditating and the therapy, even, if it works, it works. So, all right, let's jump into, at the end of my podcast, I do what's called a 3-shot nightcap, just to round up the night. There are 3 fast questions that I ask you that really are just to lighten things up, bring it to the other side and to a close, and let me have a bit of a laugh with you and see where you're at. So the first one I'm going to ask you is, which celebrity do you shamelessly follow in the news?
Oh, Pierre Poirier. Is he a celebrity? Do politicians count?
Yeah. So a politician.
Yeah. He's probably the one guy that I follow the most, just because I love how he speaks in the House. I love how he debates, and I don't know, he always seems to come out on top. I love watching him argue. So,
I'm going to have to pull that up. I'll have to pull it up. Hey, I wanted to say to you, if you go back, and Jack Cornfield is a really, really cool person who talks about psychedelics. If you get an opportunity, pull him up. All right. If you had a time machine, what year would you go back to? Why that year? And what are you going to do and see? What's the purpose?
Oh, 1969. I'm going to Woodstock.
Are you?
Oh, yeah. Just wish the Beatles would be there. But yeah, I'm going to Woodstock.
Take lots of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, since you're going back, make sure you have water. If you can't drink it, I'll sell it because they needed it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, last one. If aliens landed on Earth, who do you tell them that they should go and talk to and have a conversation with?
They got to go talk to Elon, I think.
Elon, freaking yeah.
Elon Musk, yeah. You know, I know there's a lot of opinions about Elon and whether he's, you know, a good doer or evil doer. The reason I look up to Elon is years ago I wanted to buy shares in the SpaceX, and I found out that you couldn't. And I was like, well, what the hell? I want to invest in this. Like, I believe in, you know, the future of humanity. And I found out that he decided not to make the company public until he successfully reached his mission, and that was to put people on Mars, because he was afraid that if he put the company public, that the company might be turned into like an asteroid mining business. You know, the focus would be on making money, not getting people to Mars. So I got a lot of admiration from him just based on that. So hopefully that article that I read is truthful. It's not just some made up BS. But yeah, I really thought that was admirable of him to really put the mission ahead of the money.
So I like him too. You know, same thing. They're like anybody else. You can take one side, leave the rest, whatever you want to do. But there's no doubt he shakes shit up. Yeah. He moves the needle. He changes. He stops and makes people think. Right? Whether you like him or not, he's freaking he's brilliant as far as I'm concerned.
He's bet the house many times. Like he's faced bankruptcy a few times. But like I said, I believe he's the person that focuses on the mission and not just the money. So I say the aliens should go talk to him, and maybe they could talk about moving humanity in the right direction.
Absolutely. I get it. I got it. Thank you very much. Guy, this has been so informative and so much fun. I'm so happy that you said yes and came on the podcast. So, and I'm really looking forward to your podcast premiere. That's coming out in a week or so. Yeah. So thank you for chatting with me. It's been a pleasure. And of course, I wish you nothing but success. And we will have continued interactions and hopefully maybe do this another time. Maybe I'll bring you back on the podcast in a year and we can see where things have moved on for both of us. So
yeah, you can see how I've transformed through the podcast and see where I'm at.
Yeah, I like your thing, tripping through transformation. I think that's it can't explain it any better.
Yeah, it's kind of double meaning, right? You're tripping through transformation, fumbling, stumbling, but then there's also that psychedelic aspect, right? And that's where I'm trying to take it. But like I said, it's in development.
I think so, and it goes with your lights and personality, and you know what? You're only coming out on the right side of things. Things are only going to get better now, so it's amazing. So thank you very much, and I want to say I'm going to let you out. And I'm going to wrap up this show. And I want to thank everybody for, especially you, for joining me tonight. So I will let you go, Guy, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And that's a wrap for another entertaining episode of Sunshine and Whiskey. And I hope you enjoyed sipping on the mix of business insights and life reflections. And remember, just like a well-aged whiskey, the blend of knowledge and experience only gets better with every time that we talk about things. So if you're thirsty for more, make sure that you subscribe and never miss a drop of our next provoking conversation. Before we sign off, a big thank you to our incredible guest, Guy. I appreciate you. I can't wait to see where you go from here with all the really cool things that you're heading down. Thank you for sharing your story and insight with us. We're all on this journey together, navigating the twists and savoring the flavors as we move along. So as you go about your week, keep in mind that every challenge is an opportunity to disguise and setback is a chance to learn, and every moment of joy deserves to be cherished, just like the sunlit afternoon with a glass of your favorite whiskey. So until next time, keep chasing your dreams and stay curious, stay inspired, and keep pouring that positive energy into everything that you do. So peace. Take care. Okay, I want to thank you for sharing your time with me and supporting this show. If this was damn good, it resonated with you, or sheesh, you just love this episode and would like to support this podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Follow, tag, and DM me on Instagram at Sunshine and Whiskey if you have a question or maybe you have an idea for the show.
follow me on social media and my online business, Ebb and Flow Consulting. Don't forget to check out any links on the show notes. Until next time, let's stay curious, intentional, and kind.
Hi.
Hey.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love your intro and your outro and the ticker at the bottom. See, I'm going to be learning stuff from you too.
Awesome. Yeah, you know what? The world of the internet. I mean, if a person has a few hours, man, I mean, something new like this comes out and you can take 3 hours on the internet and you can pretty much learn it, right?
Yeah.
Like, not like when we were growing up and you had to go down to the local library and open up 16 encyclopedias and try to figure out.
Yeah, go through the index cards, try to figure out where the book is kept.
Yeah, there's lots more to learn. I mean, I forgot to say to you when I pull you up just by yourself that you can't see me.
Mm.
And that trips a few people. They think they've lost me because they can't see me on the screen. And I forgot to mention that to you. But yeah, there's some really cool things, and I haven't even tapped into half of what you can do on here, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. What do you got planned the rest of the night?
Well, 7:00, the venue, which is a nonprofit that I'm working with, they're having kind of like an information evening. Yeah, just to bring awareness to what we're doing and find volunteers and maybe raise some funds or find some fundraising ideas. But yeah,
Nice.
that's where I'm headed to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that I'm going to end this